The most dangerous thing he ever did was stop answering. No arguments, no announcements, no goodbyes. Just silence that changed everything. He was always there for everyone, day and night. His phone buzzed constantly, and his time was always claimed by others. Yet no one ever asked if he was okay. He gave advice, comfort, and help without expecting anything in return. People assumed he would always be available. They never realized how much they were taking. He started noticing the pattern slowly. People reached out only when they needed something. Appreciation was rare, attention was rare, and care was almost non-existent. At first, he excused it. Maybe they're busy, maybe they don't notice. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, "This isn't fair to you." He realized that being reachable had made him invisible. Presence alone had disguised boundaries. Generosity, without limits, had become expectation. One night, after another ignored message, he sat quietly. He thought about how many times he had put others first, how many times he had been lost. That's when the decision formed in his mind. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. He would become unreachable. The next day, he didn't respond immediately. Then slowly, he stopped replying altogether. His absence began silently. People noticed quickly. Texts went unanswered. Calls went to voicemail. His usual availability had vanished. Confusion and concern replaced casual requests. Where is he? Why isn't he answering? Some even felt guilt. But most just wondered what had changed. He didn't announce. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. Silence became his statement. Boundaries became his shield. Days passed, and the silence weighed on everyone else more than him. People realized how much they had relied on him without giving back. His absence may be one fussy. He felt lighter than ever before. No constant demands, no urgent calls, no expectations. Freedom had a quiet, powerful presence. Ethan, his name, Ethan started enjoying the calm. His mind, once cluttered with others' needs, now focused on his own growth. Peace was a luxury he had never known. He began doing things for himself, without guilt. Reading, exercising, and planning his future became natural. Self-care replaced constant service. Some tried to reach him again, apologizing or asking for help. Ethan listened, but only responded selectively. Boundaries had become his priority. He realized that people don't always value you while you're present. They only notice the space you leave when it's gone. That truth was painful, yet liberating. He didn't crave revenge or validation. His goal was clarity and respect, for himself first. Growth demanded distance, not approval. Old friends called, confused and frustrated. "Why didn't you tell us?" they asked. Ethan smiled quietly. He didn't owe anyone explanations. The more unreachable he became, the stronger he felt. Solitude gave him time to reflect and recharge. His identity was no longer defined by availability. He understood a hard lesson: generosity without boundaries leads to invisibility. Love, care, and effort are valuable, but only when respected. Days turned into weeks. Ethan's life was calm, intentional, and purposeful. He no longer measured his worth by others' needs. Some people tried to guilt him. Others tried to manipulate his kindness. But Ethan's new strength was silence and consistency. He discovered that absence teaches lessons better than words. People only realized his value when they could no longer take it for granted. Ethan felt no bitterness. The journey was never about punishing others. It was about protecting himself. Small wins filled his days: a finished book, a completed project, a moment of peace. For the first time, he measured success by progress, not attention. He became a quiet inspiration for others. Not through visibility, but through action and consistency. People admired his calm, whether they admitted it or not. Ethan's life had changed completely, without a single dramatic confrontation. Silence had spoken louder than arguments ever could. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan's routine stayed consistent. He focused on himself, his goals, and his growth. Silence no longer felt empty. It felt empowering. People who once depended on him began to notice the void. Calls went unanswered, texts ignored, favors no longer accepted. Only then did they feel what they had taken for granted. He observed quietly from a distance. No anger, no drama, no confrontation. Just presence in his own life, finally uninterrupted. Ethan discovered how much energy he had wasted pleasing others. That energy was now his own. Creativity, focus, and joy returned. Old friends reached out with apologies. Some tried to manipulate his guilt. Ethan listened politely, but he didn't allow their neediness to control him again. He realized that respect is earned, not demanded. Being available doesn't guarantee it. Boundaries are the silent teachers of value. Ethan began pursuing dreams he had postponed for years. Long-forgotten ambitions became active projects. Time previously given away fueled progress now. He felt a quiet pride with every small win. Completing a task, finishing a project, mastering a skill, all celebrated privately. External validation was no longer necessary. Those who once mocked his boundaries began to admire them quietly. People recognized discipline and self-respect when it was visible in action. Ethan's life had changed silently but powerfully. He understood that life often only teaches lessons through absence. Presence is taken for granted, but absence commands attention. This truth reshaped his understanding of relationships. Ethan no longer feared solitude. Alone, he grew stronger, sharper, and more focused. Peace replaced anxiety. He reflected on all the times he had been too available. Now, he appreciated the value of intentional presence. Being unreachable had become his strength. Old patterns tried to creep back, but Ethan resisted. Silence had proven its worth. Boundaries had proven their power. He realized that those who truly cared never left. Absence didn't distance love, it filtered it. Genuine bonds survived the silence. Ethan's confidence soared without validation from others. His self-worth no longer depended on being needed. Inner security became unshakable. Every choice he made was intentional. Every action aligned with his goals and values. Freedom became the reward of his discipline. Months passed, and Ethan felt stronger than ever. His life was organized, focused, and meaningful. Silence had become a source of power, not loneliness. Those who had once taken him for granted began noticing the change. Calls went unanswered, favors were declined, and suddenly his absence mattered. Regret quietly filled the spaces he left. People who once ignored him now wondered why he had stopped being available. They realized how much they had relied on him without giving back. Recognition came too late. Ethan didn't gloat or seek revenge. He stayed calm, observing quietly. His life had already changed. Validation from others was irrelevant. He discovered that true self-worth comes from within, not from attention, not from approval, not from being needed. It comes from respecting yourself enough to set boundaries. Old friends who returned found a different Ethan, stronger, calmer, more focused. Someone who had learned that peace is worth more than constant presence. Ethan reflected on all the times he'd taken for granted and lost chipeopli. He had simply allowed life to filter out those who didn't value him. He finally understood that absence teaches lessons better than arguments. Some lessons can only be felt, not explained. Silence became his teacher. Ethan smiled, knowing he had reclaimed his life. No one could drain him, demand him, or take him for granted again. He was finally free. The ultimate truth he learned: being unreachable isn't being unkind, it's being wise. Value yourself first, and the right people will respect it. From that day forward, Ethan lived on his own terms. Calm, focused, and unstoppable. And the world, at last, noticed the value of his presence.